All right, come back from your inner journey. We are back as well. I'll give you a moment to adjust. You were asking questions earlier about multidimensional reality. We ask you to reflect on what reality do you journey into when the sound of the gong reverberates throughout your being. You can spend a few seconds here reflecting on where did your consciousness go, what did your body do, and check your chakras now to see how they are, and check your grounding cord to make sure that you are fully ensconced in the moment. And then before we go any further, everyone, think of something that you really want to bring into your life. And imagine that the state that you are now in from the sound of the gong, imagine that you are a magnet and that you will attract to yourself the people, the places, and the situations and circumstances that are needed to augment your life, to bring you happiness, to bring you joy, and to bring you peace of mind. All right, you can still feel the reverberation a little bit, but we'll continue for our discussion. Now, it is important to bear in mind that all that you are learning, it may feel as if it is the truth and it is stabilizing you and that this is what you've been looking for. But again, nothing is as it appears to be. And even if we explain everything as basically as simply as we can, we understand that as people, you project or you compare, and so the human mind does not always understand the larger picture of reality. You get increments. It's like climbing a tree. You get up the trunk and you usually go for a branch and settle in, and then you look around and then you may go to a higher branch. And it is the same way with energy. You find these little nooks and crannies. You say, this makes sense to me. This is explaining what's going on. And that is part of the self-talk that all beings have to, let's say, create stabilization. The problem is that you project and you think, it must be like this, and it may not be at all. Simply be aware that even on the path of accelerated learning, that you may convince yourself that something is one way, and yet it may not be that way at all. Reality is tricky, and so it is important to be, we don't necessarily want to say open-minded, but we want you to be considering that there are other positions, even from what you see and what you know. All right, let's proceed forward now. Does anyone have a topic of discussion that they would like to raise and bring forward?
Peace, this is Deborah. And
welcome, Deborah.
Thank you. You gave an entry to my question. And I know in this day and age, with all the smoke screens that are around us, we have to use discernment with who we learn from and who we follow and what we take in to be as truths for ourselves. And so, for instance, I follow, and probably mostly, the Native Americans. And my question is, how much influence has the Anunnaki had with the Native Americans? I feel like they lived in a pure way, left no footprints, but with things being a smokescreen, what do we trust?
Deborah, you are thinking along good lines. First of all, the Anunnaki have their fingerprints and their cells throughout your world. And the Anunnaki have been the behind-the-scenes players in just about every culture and all religions. Their goal, depending upon which Anunnaki we are speaking of, because you understand the Anunnaki story of a head guy, a father, sort of, Anu, who has two sons, Enki and Enlil, who are in endless competition with one another, endless rivalry, and endless tricks to upstage one another and to use their creations against one another. So when you are looking at people, or you are looking at, let's say, a culture such as the Native Americans, where did their beliefs come from? Who are their gods that influence them? Now, native peoples, we'll not go into specific tribes, but the native peoples in general know about the star beings. And they have a long cultural memory of star visitors, largely because they spent a tremendous amount of time outdoors and in nature. They were looking at the skies. They were present in a world where these visitors came and went. The visitors, particularly the Anunnaki, they can, some of them, read human vibration from far up in space. So, have you ever flown in an aeroplane, Deborah?
Yes.
All right. And aeroplanes usually, they're flying at about 30,000 feet. And so if you've all been in airplanes, you can look down and you see, well, there's the earth, there's no problem, and you can see roads and forests, and once in a while you may see an automobile, but never people unless you come way, way down low, ready to land. So you can look at the world, but in general, you can't figure out, oh, look at that house, I can tell what that person's thinking in that house. The Anunnaki can. Some of them, and some other visitors, can read the vibrations that are emanating from your DNA. So the certain Anunnakis would track their various people, so to speak, because they do think of themselves as sort of owners or managers of humankind. And they also manipulated the native peoples in such a way to get them to war against each other. One of the Anunnaki signatures is divide and conquer. Why do they continue this divide and conquer? Because if you were to unite and start putting all of your clues together, you would disbelieve and you would come to outgrow them very quickly. And this is what is their motivation in the background. This is their supreme motivation today. That to keep people so confused and to keep you so caught up with the barrage of information that you can't figure out what's happening. The Anunnaki, let's say, set up the technologies of today. And they know that, like a computer, the human vessel can hold X amount of data. And you know, if you have a computer, you can fill it up, and you have to get a bigger computer and more RAM or more speed or something. And humankind definitely is growing towards this. You use a small portion of your brain and a small portion of the DNA, which the Anunnaki feel that if they can fill up your biological computer with so much data, you won't be able to sort through after a while. You'll have too much to compute, especially visual data. When the native people took in visual data, it was the natural world, and it was the cosmos. And many of the native people, they figured things out. Then something would occur to wipe out the tribe or to create war, to separate them. The native people weren't sky worshippers, they were sky watchers. And they were into animism, or the creator, the power of the real creator that is in all things. Not all tribes follow this way, but certainly they do. But in terms of people, nothing is exactly as it appears to be. And people are blackmailed. Oh, they can be programmed, they can be manipulated. Understand that one of the great Illuminati tricks, again the Illuminati referring to the Latin term enlightened ones, one of their great tricks is to mind control people in such a way so that the person can appear to be opposing the Anunnaki, but they are really their puppet. So before you toot anyone's horn about how great they are, just any of you imagine that whoever you have been led to study from, that material was most important for your soul's growth. Forget the person, even if it is we. And then you must sort through to see the truth from the falsehoods. And you must look deep behind the scenes to see what are the affiliations. Is someone owning this person? Is someone, let's say, have secret affiliations? So it's very confusing to figure out who's who. So what you want to do is, rather than hang your hat on a person, you want to feel the truth of the data, and you want to make friends with your physical body so that the body becomes its own dowsing device, so that you use your feelings or your heart chakra to understand the veracity of what's being presented. Lots of people, many people, can be compromised. We are not saying that they will be turned into bad people, because really they are bad underneath, but people can be threatened. Someone threatens your pet, your children, your house, and then you start tap dancing to the tune that they want. So many a person that has started out with very good intentions, they got, what do you call it, too big for your britches? Is that your term? They got too big for their britches, meaning they were getting too full of themselves or too full of truth, and so then they get set up, they get compromised, they get tricked. And we'll say to you, throughout history, many of the greatest proponents, and it's very true today, the greatest proponents who stand out against the forces of tyranny are the representatives of the tyranny itself. Just remember this, please, because you are going to be tricked again and again, and you're going to be tricked with good talking and smooth voices, and it looks like someone standing up for the truth, and then they are really the one to betray you. This has happened again and again in governments, in commerce, in military, in unions, and all manner of deceit. We have maintained that your greatest feat as humans is to be able to read truth from deceit. And that means that you must put your prejudice aside, meaning I like this person or I don't like this person. Sometimes that has nothing to do with it. Sometimes it has everything to do with it. You may tune in and say, this person is not right, there's something wrong, they give me the creeps. And that may be a key. Sometimes you may say, oh, I don't like that person, I don't like their glasses or the way they dress or the way they wear their hair. And you may dismiss someone who really has a complete sincerity with their data. We'll give you a clue that the more far out things are, they're probably closer to the truth. Because, again, nothing is as you picture it, and things are so manipulated. And the media, as we said earlier, is a form of mind control. It is here to occupy you, to keep you entertained so that you do not do individual thinking. So someone does your thinking for you. And this may come shortly. It may all blow up because of the forces that are putting pressure today for the truth, the various truths, to rise to the surface. What else, Deborah?
That's all, and thank you very much.
You are very welcome. Now, let's say this. Sometimes it happens for people, good people, where they've been a believer or a follower or an admirer of certain information or a person. And then they find out that their admiration has been misplaced. Recognize that you are very trusting people and you have a certain innocence about you, and you project that innocence onto others. I wouldn't do it, so they wouldn't do it. And this is where you have been tricked and leveraged into falsehoods. Take, for example, the Catholic Church, and how many people they have tricked and really damaged in terms of housing all of these pedophile priests. This is very, very, very sad. We'll say this too. From the days of Shirley Temple, she just deceased, Shirley Temple Black. What a name. You think that's a normal name?
No.
Good. Temple is affiliated with what?
Probably
Loyalty, worship, priesthoods.
Temples, priesthoods, Templars, yes. Black Temple, what a name, yes. Temple Black. Shirley Temple was, let's say, an early representative of someone who was deeply involved in the dark side of Hollywood and was constantly perpetrated by pedophiles. Sue saw a little movie recently. Look it up, Google it, War Babies. Shirley Temple and the guys. She's doing hoochie coochie dances. She's got a diaper on. All the other kids have diapers on. They're sucking on milk bottles and sucking things and sucking on lollipops. All of this is highly sexualized for children under 5 years old. These movies were made, what, in the 30s, the 40s?
And they were 4 to 5 year old children.
Yes.
And if they did not behave, they would put them in a silent room and sit them on a block of ice.
Yes. This is a way of traumatizing you. And so imagine you're 5 years old and you have to sit on a block of ice. What's that going to do to you? So of course you are going to do what you are told. And so basically what we are getting around to with Deborah's question is the level of trickery and deceit is so massive, and you can't see it because you want something to be, you grab onto what things look like, and the human body has learned to block out all that is unpleasant. The energy that's weaving through all of you now is compelling more and more people to see through what's already been there. And of course there are many shocks, many realizations in this process. We would say, do not beat up on yourself for pouring your energies on something that turn out to be less than reputable. And do not put fancy clothes on someone or an institution that does not deserve it. The United Nations really recently evaluated the Catholic Church, and they basically called Pope Francis on the carpet and said there are at least 10,000 pedophile priests still in the U.S. in practice. How many are there left in the world? And if you are really what you say you are about, you need to fire every single one of these people. Every single one. But that won't work, will it? because there's not 10,000 or 50,000 to replace all of those. Then you must ask yourself, what frequency is this institution putting out that it attracts all of these people with the same issue? It's a big question, yes?
Yes.
So then you must ask yourself, well, I never saw any signs that said pedophiles welcome, come to the Catholic Church. Right? There's no advertisement for this. So what do they do? How do they get these people? Because it's an energetic signature. And people who do secretive things, especially things that harm others, they have very high radar to locate others who vibrate at that level. And those people who wouldn't think of those things and who are very good, let's say, this is the ignorance again. And so there's lots of things happening in society to shake people out of their ignorance, to wake them up and to say, stop giving your power away to people, to situations that are not what they say they are. Well, this is just an all the way around warning. And this is going to make things more and more confusing. You have been encouraged to trust yourself. But just because we and others have encouraged you to trust yourself does not mean that every decision you make is trustworthy. Because your own projections get in the way. And when they do, and you muck up, do not fail yourself. Simply say, ooh, I've got a lot to learn here. I thought it was this way. And then it turned out not to be. This is a lesson in my own awakening, in my own discernment. And remember, what you do to create a mess is that you, in your own generosity, give others the benefit of the doubt, because you are, let's say, as a people, the majority of you are very good. And so you assume everyone else is very good, and this is how you are snookered. So you can see why part of the vibrating at a higher level and tossing off your fear is to develop psychic attunement. And these attunements, this year they are going to really burst forth. Whenever there is intense astrological changes, there's a big bump up in, let's say, the psyche of humans, and there's a big downfall. Both happen. Some can't take it, and others rise to the top like the cream. Anything else, Deborah?
No, I think that answers my question.
All right, good. It was a good question. Who else has a comment, something they want to share about the hidden design of reality? Or the
Laura?
Yes, who is it?
Laura?
Laura, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here. I am along the lines of Hollywood. I would love to know more about that.
About Hollywood?
Yes. Currently,
it looks like a good 85-92% of the people are deeply compromised in mind control. Sometimes they start off as just regulars cracking in. In other words, they're not related, they are not third generation Hollywood royalty or something. They just get in and they do it, and they are good at what they do. Sometimes when they start figuring out what's going on and that some of their fellow actors have strange habits and never come out of character, and they stay in character the entire shoot of the film, they go, what's going on here? And they start to put two and two together, and then they are suicided. They can be suicided in many, many ways. Drug overdoses, automobile wrecks, you name it, it goes on and on. And usually they are suicided for two reasons. Either they can no longer be controlled, or, more than likely, in the case of a few of them, singers, etc., they are worth more dead than they are alive. You get that?
yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that you can go back to Elvis to look for an example of that. You go back to Marilyn Monroe, and then you fill in the blanks over the last few famous singers who suddenly, young, were dead. And they are big singers, and so then their estates grow and grow and grow, and they don't have to deal with the person anymore, but they are dealing with the productivity of the golden eggs that the goose laid. And many of these people are programmed to perform, to, let's say, do amazing feats, just as the military is taking soldiers, sometimes third or fourth generation soldiers from the family, and subjecting them to, as we said, biohacking, bioengineering, and creating super soldiers. These you don't hear of so much. And often these super-duper soldiers are fighting secret wars, either underground or off-planet. What else, Miss Laura?
I know that there are people already inside infiltrating the system I know that Hollywood is a system to be broken up,
And do you understand why these people are in Hollywood and what Hollywood represents?
Mind control.
Yes, but they represent, it's good, mind control. But Hollywood, they make movies, yes?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And movies fill up your computer.
Right.
Because they've got a lot of data in them.
Right.
Just as if you have an old-fashioned computer and you want to put live streaming on it,
Right.
after a while there's not enough room unless you have a super-duper computer.
Right.
And they create stories for you, whether it's Shirley Temple or whether it's aliens coming from space, that condition your ideas about reality, and movies abscond the imagination.
Mm-hmm.
They leave no time for the imagination to come up with its own inventiveness or its own pictures of reality. Please continue.
I'm sorry?
Continue.
Oh, continue. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. And then I was wondering, off subject, about geoengineering and how is that affecting us?
Geoengineering.
Yes.
You are talking about, yes, it's a term that has been bantered about now. It's come really quickly into the lingua franca of humanity. In other words, a few years ago, people couldn't even conceive of it. Now today, people are talking about geoengineering, terraforming, this kind of thing. Dave said it earlier. Are the Anunnaki setting up an environment that is more conducive to themselves than it is to humankind? We would say absolutely. Geoengineering has been done extensively by visitors to your planet. You have been led to believe that geographical or geophysical changes occur very slowly, like drips of water on a stone. You had a man named Immanuel Velikovsky, quite a character in and of himself. He was around in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. He wrote a book called Planets, Worlds in Collision, etc. And he talked about, he said things do not happen gradually, they happen catastrophically and quickly and dramatically and dynamically. And he explored controversial ideas about space, and of course all the scientifics who are paid to keep information suppressed, they were very threatened by him. And we'll say this, that beings can control the earth from the moon, and they have. Beings can send meteorites, asteroids, comets past your world to create a change in the geophysical structure. And it's been since the 1970s that a few governments of the world, the US, China, later, of course, not early, but US and Russia at that time, Soviet Union, were given the technologies from ET contacts to create weather modifications. And from the 70s onwards, some little bit in the early 70s, but it really started in the 1977-78, if anyone recalls the extreme weather patterns that were coming about, that were geoengineering the planet. Today, look at the weather that you've had in the last 6 months or the last 2 years. Quite extreme, yes? And instead of landing troops on the ground, one can just simply control the weather with drought or with flooding or with fires. You ruin an economy. You can force a people to migrate. It is said that California now is under 100-year drought, 1,000-year drought, an 800-year drought. It makes no difference. Lake Mead and Lake Powell have gone down, 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 down. California is responsible for a lot of the nation's food. It is being bombarded from the west by high, extreme levels of radiation. Even in Tokyo now today, even though Caroline Kennedy is there acting as if everything is just fine, people are leaving Tokyo in droves, and people want to save their children, and they are wanting to evacuate out of Japan. And you have radiation and drought. This drought could go on for a long period of time, or it could be alleviated. But both instances are about geoengineering. And as happens to California, will affect the entire nation. On another level, we've always said that California would have huge karma to pay for Hollywood, because it is from that little location that they have mucked up the world and given all manner of dark energies and controlled people's minds. That in of itself would have to have some manner of blowback. What else?
I'll let somebody ask a question, and somebody else ask a question. Thank you for your time.
Who else wants to ask about what we've just said or something else?
My name's Jess. Well, we met.
This is who again?
Jess.
Jess, all right. Welcome, Jess, again.
Thank you. It's not super similar, but it goes along the lines with Hollywood, I feel. Two questions. One, how can we not so much protect ourselves, but orient ourselves around the intelligence and the surveillance of the government, or away from the mind controlling or the Illuminati, things along those natures that are working to put us against each other? So how we can...
Listen, if it was the 1950s, we'd say, get your bucket and go pick berries. Or get your fishing pole and go hang out on the dock and fish and relax and be in nature. Being in nature, Jess, even if it is being geoengineered, there's still a stabilizing force in nature that works with the human body. In other words, when you walk out the door, the birds know it, the crickets know it, the worms know it, Earth knows it. And if you say hello, nature will respond in kind to the frequencies that you need to keep you in balance. And you will be impulsed to brush up against the lavender, of course not in the winter, but or to lean over and smell the hyacinth or the any manner of flower. In today's world, you are going to have to be more vigilant about what you cheer on, what you listen to, where you put your power. We know for young people, they are enticed to follow this Justin Bieber guy. But understand that he's a huge product of mind control. And that his instability of going back and forth is he's losing it completely. And yet society is acting as if he's some important component to everyone's daily reality. So it's that kind of thing that you must strive to put aside. If you want to do music, then get yourself an instrument and play yourself. Do you understand? Because all things are so contrived in such a way as to take you over. So again, pull back if you can from the electronic digital world. And it would be very good, Jess, if you had a few friends that felt the same way you did. And so whether you have those friends now or not, you can attract them to you by saying, my hands are magnets, and I will draw to myself all the things that help me grow and that fulfill my heart's desire. And for all of you, you need trustworthy friends. And so that would be a good thing to put out for, to attract what you want. You are in a precarious situation as young people, more challenged than others, because you are learning things at a younger age that sort of disappoint the position of the world for you. What else?
I was going to ask if you could enlighten me a little about the Masonic order.
About the Masonic order.
Yes.
All right. You are young to know about the Masonic order. How do you know this?
Someone in my extremely close family is a Mason. And
All right.
I have bad vibes, and I've since then moved 800 miles away.
All
That's
right.
because of that.
Now,
You can fill in the rest.
the Masons are builders.
Yes.
That's the oldest quality that they have. They're builders. They understood, historically speaking, how to build in stone. And one of their key understandings was how to build arches and to put the key stone in there, that stone that held everything together. So they were old builders. They came out of the tradition of the Templars. And the Templars, we talked about this last time we were here. They arose in the early 1100s, 1107, some such like this. And then 200 years later, 1300s, they were so powerful that the Catholic Church went after them on October 13th, Friday of 1307. This is why you have the historical understanding of Friday the 13th being an unlucky day. It was when the Templars were arrested. The Templars basically went against the church, and they found out about the Anunnaki. They may not have understood the Anunnaki, but they knew the church was not correct. They knew that the story of Jesus was not correct. The church was totally threatened by them. And these Templars found many Anunnaki objects, old power objects, that were hundreds of thousands of years old. And they found them where they were holding the portal open to conduct crusades into Jerusalem, or Jerusalem as you understand it. And all of the Middle East around Jerusalem, Egypt, Syria, Iraq, all this area was like Cape Canaveral, an ancient space center. To this day, the space shuttle, which has been retired, but you know the shape of the space shuttle, yes? The space shuttle, modern times, was designed exactly as old rocketry that the Anunnaki had. So, who are the Masons? They then became the relatives of the Templars from 1300s onward, and the Templars figured out the secrets of the Anunnaki. Some of the Anunnaki were working on a spiritual level, or let's say non-physical level, with these Templars. Today, the large majority of Masons are clueless.
Yeah, I hope so.
Absolutely clueless. They would make up the bottom ranks. If you think about a pyramid, they would make up many, many, many layers of the solidness of the pyramid. Closer to the top would be special Masons, and it has been reported that all presidents of the United States, once they are inaugurated or just prior to inauguration, they are inducted into Masons, whether they've been a Mason or not, and they become 33rd degree Masons. And it has been reported now that to become a high-level Mason, you have to go through an extremely humiliating and compromising sexual initiation. Why? Think about it. If someone said, you want to come to the Peas on Sunday afternoon? You said, yes, of course I want to. Well, you have to go through this to do it. And it was debasing and humiliating, but you wanted to be here more than you cared about being debased. Do you understand? Because being here meant you could become a millionaire. So then you would say, well, all right, who cares what debasement I have to go through as long as I get in that club? And then everything opens to me. So why would they blab afterwards?
Right.
They're in the club. So this is now a select group, but they then use all of the others as a front, and let's say the others say, no, Masons are fine, there's nothing wrong with what we are doing. We march in parades, we take up collections, we help sick people, we run all kinds of things, etc.
Thank you so much.
These would be old Anunnaki rituals. Remember, the Anunnaki were geneticists, some of them. And where they got lost is their ability to create meaningless life that would serve their purposes, whether to create humans to be workers or to create animal-human combinations that would be for sexual pleasure. Today, there are high-ranking people in the world who have their own private zoos, so to speak. And you can fill in the blanks from there. Yes, it's, again, there's a very, very dark side to what is going on behind the scenes. On another level, there's a light side that's rising, that's in some way over the next 15 years is going to expose everything. And then humankind will have to decide, how do we go forward and what will be our new values? And it's not that you are alone. There are all manner of beings who support you, who will guide you into a new standard and a new dignity of being a human. But you are the ones with the feet on the ground. We can help you with giving you ideas and suggestions and energy and what to do to manage things, but we don't live in your bodies and on your world. And so the change must come from each human. And every step you take towards an expansion of consciousness lifts the entire human race upward. And often you do not understand how much you contribute individually to the wellness of the whole. When you are willing to know the darker side and still be strong and healthy within, you epitomize the strength and the dignity of the human race. And there are some Anunnaki who cheer you on because they put themselves in you, and they know that their race is rotten, and they want to see some manner of resurrection, some manner of, let's say, transformation, transmutation to a higher level. Because as you change, everything will change.
Peace.
Yes.
This is George.
Yes, George.
When you just said that, it triggered something I read just the other day, and it was just a headline, but it was so riveting that it kind of triggered me a little bit. And that is that in Japan, or near Japan, I think it was a U.S. ship, was in the area, and somehow everybody on board got exposed to some of the radioactive water, and almost immediately everyone lost control of their bowels. And to me, that sounded fantastical. It sounded like a science fiction movie or something almost.
Or it is a quality of the radiation
Exactly.
exposure, yes.
But I wondered
Itching and diarrhea and
I
this kind of
wondered
thing.
if that was actually like Anunnaki or Illuminati kind of test. Who can survive this?
Well, George, right after Fukushima happened, they sent a carrier, we'll call it a naval carrier, but I'm not sure the official names of these things, but it was called the USS Reagan or some such. They were sent as a, let's say, rescue crew or to help out, and all of them are very, very sick, and they are attempting to pursue with lawsuits against everyone, and well, that story is really being squished and squashed. So you are wondering if
If it was like a sacrifice, is it another experiment? Because if they've experimented with us through the eons, they're probably still experimenting to see. if
oh,
this
there's
is
the
gonna switch on.
experimentation has not stopped, and they figure there's no shortage of supplies in terms of your numbers, but they will run out of trained people after a while. The military can't just kill off 10,000 here and expect 10,000 to take their place.
All right.
Especially in today's world, people are starting to smarten up about getting blown up and the trauma of getting wounded and what it does to society, to families, to all people. And they are attempting to cover it up by making super warriors. So we'll give you prosthesis here and give you electronic this and make you superhuman. And those people are compelled, they're obsessed with what they call duty. But that duty is a word that legitimizes killing.
On another note, in the first gonging and then again in the second gonging that the vehicle did, the first time I had this image that came up real suddenly, and it was, you've talked about this in the past, the golden orbs, and now we even use it around our aura, using the gold color to strengthen our aura. And I could see very clearly all these golden orbs that were organizing themselves in space, but I couldn't figure out what they were organized for. It was like they were coming almost equidistant from each other, and then I could just see space behind it. So in the second time, vehicle, or I think it was you, had said something about, we're not the only part of the empire that's waking up, or we're not the only one.
Yes, we said that earlier, that in other words, people of Earth and your timeline are not the only colony, and because of Anunnaki genes in you and their genes in other people in other places, in other words, they didn't just fool around with genetic engineering here.
Right, right.
There's other playgrounds out there. And this, you call it resonance.
Resonance.
Or
That's what I see.
reciprocity.
Yeah.
And once you start vibrating with something, there's no barriers in space that say, oh, well, past atmosphere or past the magnetosphere, these frequencies do not go. The galactic center transmits to you, and you transmit to the galactic center. This is what you call non-local reality, meaning there is no space-time differential. And this is what they are terrified of, is that all of their colonies may go belly up.
Yeah, that was the image in the second one. It seemed like the connections were starting to be formed to whole different multi-dimensional realities, and that it's like once Fukushima starts, you can't stop it. It's like it keeps going and going.
It's a chain reaction.
It's a chain reaction.
Yes. Now, understand that when our vehicle is playing the gong, and she sets an intention, the energies start to line up. Not only do the cells in your body reorganize and the chakras relax and open to take the energy in, but also the call goes out and the energies feel the intention, and the power of a gong is multidimensional. So you start to receive a flood of good energies that come to want to work with you, to say, who's doing this? Where's it coming from? The chi. So you were starting to pick up on the visual end of what's being attracted to you. And sometimes dark energies can read this as well, but when we do our work, we and our vehicle set up certain parameters of protection so that there's no interference with what we are doing. Anything else, George?
Well, I was attempting to look at, Fukushima looks really bad on the surface, but if we're going to learn to adapt and then work together, not only with each other and in ourselves to raise our frequency, and if we have this support from completely other parts of, the multiverse, then it seems like that may be part of it. Yes, it seems to sometimes when I hear like, oh, well, it's going to take ET intervention, or maybe that's their plan to stop the extinction event of Fukushima. It's kind of like, no, maybe we're our own saviors.
Say it again, maybe.
We're our own saviors. It's not someone's going to save us, but.
Well, it goes both ways. There's many scenarios that can inspire, and you said a key word, extinction. From scientific point of view, scientifics believe that there have been 5 major extinctions on your planet. Mm-hmm. The last, according to their speculation, would have been the eradication of the dinosaurs, according to historical measure, which they dated about, 65 million years ago or some such. We would say that at 65 million years ago, not all dinosaurs were extincted. And there's ample evidence that many survived thereafter. So there's a speculation that you are in a period called the 6th extinction right now, the 6th extinction. And there's plenty of evidence for all manner of life, starting from insect and moving up the ladder through the amphibians and on up to the two-leggeds, etc., the mammals, that species are disappearing at a rate that is absolutely phenomenal. As we said earlier, a species will die off or will disappear into a probable reality. Now, the hidden design of reality is very obvious to some branches of science, the quantum branches. They understand that the observer, the participant, creates all manner of realities, and that there is not one reality, and that past and present and future, they are separated by the dimension of time, which is an illusion. And so part of this illusion will appear that there's only one world in which all these things are occurring. But we said earlier that you dip in and out of that world, and that many of you spend time every day in a bunch of different worlds, some of which feel better than others. And it is almost as if you are straddling worlds, going back and forth. And so there's the distinct possibility that in some of your alternative worlds that you are migrating into, that someone of a human nature comes up with the solution to ameliorate the effects of radiation. All the while, we will say to you, there will be many, many people and many life forms who eventually will be greatly affected by this. And again, when you're dealing with the military, it's always, always considered to be a lab experiment.
Yeah, that's what I call it.
You join the military, you are a lab rat for whatever some higher up wants to do to take a test on you. David, we hear your wheels spinning.
I thank you. I got a question regarding Fukushima, if the governments, and it just doesn't look like it's the U.S. government, it sounds like the Canadian government, the Mexican government are all covering this up from what I've been hearing from friends there. And
Absolutely.
when the people find out what they're covering up, it seems like you're going to have a revolution of at some point they can't cover this up. I mean, I heard the other day, they said, oh, the metal detectors don't work. Those are, don't pay any attention, not the metal detectors.
The Geiger counters.
Yeah, the Geiger counters, they're off or whatever. So that's my first question. And then my second question is, if we were so powerful with our minds and creation, can't we just block out collectively the Anunnaki if we all really wake up? So those are two questions.
Well, David, there's the power of the individual, then there's the power of the collective. So when you move your individual reality and you place yourself here and there, that's your own volition. Then when you are dealing with the mass consciousness, that moves much, much slower. So what will the people do? Most people don't want to know things that will rock their boat. So why would they go looking to see if the government's lying? It takes a certain kind of person that's very strong to ride off into the sunset on their horse by themselves. You follow? That would be the kind of people you are. I want to know the truth, I'm going after it. But the large majority of people, their plates are so full, their reality is so occupied with engaging in material survival or material enjoyment that they can't even understand it. Here's an example. Our vehicle saw something recently where a man was testing people out in California. And he said, I am giving away free water from Fukushima. Would you like some? And on the bottle, it had that sign that said nuclear radioactive, yes. So this goes on, and he's passing out on Santa Monica Pier or some pier in California. And 9 out of 10 people say, sure, Fukushima, oh yeah. Yes, new kind of water. It's from Fukushima, and it's going to amp your field up and make you feel well, and all this, full of minerals. He says, the people take it, open the bottle, and chug it down.
Wow.
1 out of 10 says,
No way.
what are you talking about? And then they see the nuclear sign, and they say, hey man, funny, and they walk off. But that's 1 out of 10.
Right.
What does this say about how smart people are about one of the biggest events that's happened on your planet? So will they rebel? Probably not, because they don't want to know. They will more than likely get sick rather than rebel, because many people cannot conceive that people they elected would lie, or that the truth is not on TV. Or the radio, or the internet. Exactly. So these are the odds that you are up against. And when the rebellion comes, yes, there will be people bang bang shoot 'em up, and there'll be all manner of what you call commando and renegade and rebellion forces, guerrilla warfare. All this is, people are stocking up for it. But the majority of people will be befuddled until they have a spiritual awakening. And when all of that stuff starts going to the streets, and they start attacking or subverting the government, then you'll know that the spirit stuff is awakening inside people, and they will be having unexplainable spiritual experiences, and they will start asking and seeking and going. At that point, the internet may be down. The kill switch may be flipped, because one thing for certain, that's the internet can inform you, but it can really confuse you. And the confusion is very great. It's covering a lot of things, but once the cat's out of the bag, more than likely all of that will go down, so that people will not be able to check on each other or to rally forces. And even if they do, all of it can be tracked. Sort of a conundrum, yes? Mm-hmm. Now, whenever there's a conundrum, Acknowledge it. It looks like I'm backed in a corner. And then you can say, all right, tonight in my dream state, I'm going to come up with solutions because I'm turning it over to higher self. And I did not come here to have a blocked out reality. I came here to use my creativity, to use the raw forces of power that are all around me to bring goodness and to enhance my life. And if you focus on this, it is like prayer. Prayers are answered because prayers condition the space. And so imagining and insisting and holding on to something working out in your favor and in the favor of humankind, this is your spiritual test as a people. What was the other part of the question?
The other question is, if we can create with our minds and our thoughts create reality.
Oh, can you?
Can we block the Anunnaki and send them back to home they came from, or whatever?
This is already occurring, absolutely, because many people are seeing through things. More books are being written, films are being made, discoveries are coming out to the ground all the time, and wait till you find out what gets ripped open about the U.S. of A. Goodness gracious, there's many discoveries about remnants of Anunnaki civilization from about 200 to 250,000 years ago, all over the U.S. Someone recently said that there's a wall that has been found in Texas, and someplace around Rock Wall, what a name, Texas, and this wall is massive. It is all made from homemade rock. In other words, it's not quarried rock, it's poured rock. And the wall is something like 20 miles long, and we forget how thick, but massive, massive, indicative of very old civilization here in the USA. And there are many, many, many other remnants that were from Anunnaki days. So can you just unplug and stop believing in them? Yes, this is the process that you are engaged in. And they are engaged in fighting amongst themselves over who is going to have rulership over this next age, the age of Aquarius. So it's one big muddle, but it's one big orchestration that has a higher order to it, and there are players far beyond the Anunnaki, who hold the space open for you and the Anunnaki and others to come into their own, to extricate yourself from pain and separation, from war and hatred and anger and competition, and to find a place to vibrate with the miraculous, glorious, life-sustaining oneness of the multiverse, the gift of Prime Creator. And so hang in there. As we said, have a good time. Schedule in events that uplift your lives, because you are so engaged in what you are doing you can't even see it. Who else has a question?
I just have one more.
Yes, this is Jess.
Yes. I just was wondering about the dream state. If you could elaborate on multidimensionality and for some people who might have really vivid dreams, maybe just enlighten me on what we do while we're dreaming, or who we're in contact with, and what, or any ways we could sort of control that or explore those dimensions, maybe?
Well, you certainly, if you're having vivid dreams now as a young lady, we would say that you are being called to explore this reality. The simplest way that we can describe the dream state is such that it is a playground where you play, you leave the body when you dream, and you play in a fluid environment that is a chemical component of your mind. And if you look at the little sign here, it shows that the lower vibration, the slower your brainwave cycles go, you move into a state we call the potato in the garden of the mind. But in the scientific model, it is called delta, or 4 cycles per second or less. So the brain cycles slow down, the chemicals change, and you literally play with probable realities. You sort of test things out. You've certainly been shopping to buy clothes, where you go to a store and you say this, 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 and this, and then in general, unless you are very confident, you take them into the dressing room and you put them on and you say yes, yay, nay, can I afford this, etc., and you make a choice. Shopping this is sort of what you do in the dream state.
Life shopping.
You reality shop. You work out answers to problems. You often take your driver's test before you take your driver's test in physical reality. You often check out your marriage before you get married. You have more freedom to explore. It is a very fluid state. It is a very psychic state. Many people, many cultures have encouraged people to learn how to wake up in the dream state. Do you know what this means, Jess?
Are you talking about lucid dreaming?
Lucid dreaming, yes, but it also, when you wake up, you're dreaming and you're in a dream, let's say. And then suddenly the dream is cruising along and you are in it, and then you say, wow, I am dreaming.
I've been working on it.
Right. And the way to do that is you look for your feet or your hands.
Okay.
It's a technique. And then you say, wow, I'm dreaming. Then the power comes. Because then you can change the dream. And you can play with it. And you can do many, many things. Once you start accomplishing this is a very, very important key, and it's part of the hidden design of reality.
You can do it in your real life.
Then you do it in real life. Then you say to yourself, aha, and when you have a dream like that, remember it. Whatever you can change in it, because in the dream, if a lion is coming at you, you can turn it into a kitten. If you are trapped somewhere and there's a tidal wave coming, you can conjure up an airplane and jump into the plane and fly away. Or you can simply say, I don't have to go out with this tidal wave, I'm dreaming, I think I'll just wake up. But what all these things do, to conjure up a plane and to fly away, even if you don't know how to fly, you are using your skills of creativity, imagination, and using the energy of existence to make something in this playground. And you play with it. And you know, when you wake up, you are fine and there's no mistakes. And even if you die in the dream state, I'm glad here I am. And so it's a place to play. The dreams can also have premonitions. They can have warnings. But mostly they are about shopping for the reality that you want. So that is why it's very important for all of you to condition your dream state before you fall asleep. You can say, tonight in the dream state, I am going to meet with, or I am going to do this, or I am going to be youth regenerated, or I am going to work with the healers, or I am going to take the test tonight, so that tomorrow when I take the test in school, I know all the answers. Oh yes, you can do that. Absolutely. The power is unlimited. Now, first of all, we want to let you know that you come from good genes and you've had good parents.
Thank you.
And that is important for them to know too, because you are an extraordinary woman
I appreciate that.
for a young lady. And your sign is what? When were you born?
March 4th.
March 4th. Well, then you are a Pisces.
Yes.
And that means that March 4th, you're going to be in it a little bit now, just like the USA, but it's fine. No, it's fine. It's fine. It's working for you. But a Pisces, ask George Ward. He's Mr. Pisces himself.
Talks about it.
There's a lot of ability to dream.
Yes.
It is tremendous. So you want to set those dreams up into motion. Do you keep a dreaming journal?
Every night.
Good. Then that dreaming journal can empower you, because what you can start achieving in your dreams, when you can change your dreams, it will act as a confidence builder
Yes.
for what you can then meet in reality. Know that because you are developing skills, very advanced skills for a young woman, that you will be very tested in this lifetime.
Yes, I know.
Not so much now, but you will be tested certainly when you are in your late 20s, early 30s, then again early 40s, again early 50s, and it goes on. The more power you take on at a younger age, the greater the tests are, but also the greater the soul's mission. And again, you positioned yourself to find things out that most people your age are not interested in. This, without getting you any kind of puffed up energy, is just saying you've come here to do a big job. So keep your feet on the ground.
Yes.
Do you draw?
No. I've
Do
been thinking about it, though, the past 3 days.
Do you play a musical instrument?
I can. I was also thinking about that the past few days as well.
Both of these will be very good for you to do. Are you interested in writing?
I just started journaling again.
Eventually you will be a writer. We see that not till at least 10 more years, but that is one of your roles, is to write, to be able to present this. But we say the artistic side for any Pisces is essential, because Pisces can get mixed up and very lost. Mm-hmm. It is the sign of self-undoing. And so if you could find some way to regularly ground yourself and to create beauty, mm-hmm. That is real, whether it is music or art or some such, this will help you tremendously to ground your dreams in. Eventually move to gardening or decorating or bringing beauty into 3D reality, something concrete that you can see, or to help other people do beauty will be very rewarding, because beauty opens the psychic senses.
Thank you so much.
You are very welcome. You know, it's a great pleasure to be able to help all of you, whether you are on this side of leaving or this side of coming. It is our duty, really, and we get graded on our actions with you. Believe us when we say that we are not at the top of the chain at all. We have our own teachers that chastise us or reward us for how we engage with you. Who has a question?
Please, this is Brian.
Brian.
I have a real quick question about the dream state.
All right.
Sometimes when I'm falling asleep, or I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I'm in that hypnagogic state, I will see very vividly colored lights. Sometimes there'll be red dots, extremely precisely formed like a crystal. Other times I'll see different colored lights coming down, and I'll just watch them. It's quite entertaining. And
Your eyes are open or closed?
They're closed.
They're closed, and this is just as you're coming out of dreaming?
Correct.
So you are sort of landing the plane
Yes.
of consciousness, coming from delta to, or potato back to P,
Right.
and you see these lights.
And it's sometimes when I'm falling asleep, but mostly when I wake in the middle of the night, and I'll keep it in that state, and I'll watch it for a long time, and I feel as if I'm downloading some data from somewhere. Is that possible?
Yes, of course it is. Basically, the mind will fill in the blanks, so that you know you've all had silly dreams, where puppy dogs are chasing kernels of corn or something ridiculous. Or, shoelaces get up and start dancing, and you think, what, my mind is just full of frivolousness. But especially as you come closer to consciousness or the beta state or P, the mind starts to fill in the blanks. It wants you to know something happened, and it will use symbolic language, symbolisms, to let you sort of interpret what transpired. So lights, colored lights. Light is a symbol of a carrier for information. So basically, Brian, what you have been involved in for many years now is extreme downloads of information. Now, this does not happen every evening or every nap that you take. It will go in waves. Many of you will get these downloads for 2-3 weeks, 3 months at a time, and then maybe a year, and then it sort of lets you rest. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you can feel it as if something's filling you right up. Mm-hmm. Acknowledge it. Always say hello. Acknowledge, oh, I see what's going on. And if you can, if you want to, direct it or ask for what you want. The more you acknowledge that something's going on, even if you don't know what it is, you are starting to neurologically stir your own intelligence. And this is so very important. So, you are receiving a tremendous amount of support for what you are doing. And we'll add this. If any of you are in a position where you are assisting the growth of humankind, you may be volunteering at a soup kitchen. You may be doing readings as George Ward does. You may be like Cherry Lee, holding the Dancing Moon open for people to learn from. You may, however you operate, if you are helping humankind to alleviate their difficulty and raise them into greater comfort, even if it's just on a physical level, the quality of the energies that are going to be working with you are very different than those who are working on Wall Street just to make money for themselves and screw the public. You follow this? Those people are not going to have very arousing dreams. Their dreams may be focused on getting them out of there. Your dreams are going to give you greater abilities, greater strength. So in conclusion, the hidden design of reality has many facets to it. We've given you a lot of information, and there's much more to come. Bottom line, be respectful of your physical body and who you are. The body has great adaptability to move into health and higher vibration. Sometimes physical discomfort is an initiation to slough off the old so that you can come into something new. This is the Chinese year of the wooden horse. Be careful for Trojan horses. That's the wooden horse in your history. And then you've had wooden horses that are your rocking horses from childhood, that were fun horses. So be mindful that the entirety of the planet is moving into new territory. Some of you will ride courageously. Some of you will ride with dignity. And some will fall off. Get back up and get back on and keep going. And use all that you have, all the energy that is around you, to create what it is that's in your heart. And if you don't know what you want, then just ask for goodness. Ask for a good life. Ask for peace, harmony, friendship, joy, and a good dose of abundance. It's been our great pleasure, and we will see you again on the highways and byways of multidimensional existence. Good afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you.